when my family here in Canada, I was talking to my family in Jamaica, it's like no one wanted to say cancer. Everyone was just saying, oh, she's sick. I'm like, no, 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 no. I know we have certain stigmas in the Black community. We need to really speak clearly about all the things that we are going through because we can help other people. And that's when I decided that I had to put this down on paper and publish something that can help people who looked like me. So I had to put it out there. I felt like I had no choice because it wasn't about me in that moment. It was about how I can help my community.
Welcome to This is Perimenopause, the podcast where we delve into the transformative journey of perimenopause and beyond. I'm one of your hosts, Mikkel.
And I'm your other host, Michelle. And we know firsthand how confusing, overwhelming, and downright lonely this phase of life can be.
Join us as we share real-life stories and expert advice to help you navigate this journey and advocate for your best health.
We used to think menopause signaled an end, but really, it's just the beginning.
We met Dwania Peele at the first ever National Menopause Show, and we were blown away by her positivity, energy, and fire. Instantly, we knew that we wanted all of you to meet Dwania, to hear firsthand about her incredible story of resilience in the face of a breast cancer diagnosis and overnight menopause. Perhaps most importantly, we want everyone to hear about how she's sharing her healing journey to advocate for better and culturally competent healthcare. When I asked Dwania to tell us about herself, she started with the words, "I am a lover of life." And that is absolutely what comes through in this open and bold conversation about intense health challenges and the fact that women, particularly Black women, need and deserve better. Boundary setting, caring for yourself, the importance of service, and how optimism is about perspective and prioritizing happiness are just some of the many gems in this beautiful conversation. We hope she inspires you to share your story, because as Dwania says, we need to speak clearly about the things we are going through so that we can help other people. Dwania, thank you for sharing your light with us. Dwania, welcome. So excited to have you and follow up on our all too brief time together at the National Menopause Show way back when. God, that seems like a lifetime ago.
It wasn't that long ago, but it does seem that long ago. Thank you so much for having me, Mikkel.
Oh, so excited. Michelle is really disappointed she couldn't be here today. So as I said, before we hit record, we'll have to do this again when Michelle can be part of it.
Okay, like I'm in pink in honor of like our first
That's
meeting.
right, because she had on that crazy bold pink suit,
Yeah.
right? Oh, good for you. Good memory. Good memory. So many questions. I think we'll start. You have an incredibly powerful and inspiring story, and you're an author, entrepreneur, advocate, breast cancer survivor. Maybe you can give us a synopsis of all of that and who you are.
You know, I usually start off by saying I'm a lover of life because I love all things. I wake up in the morning and I'm excited because I'm alive and I'm able. And there are three things I love: sunshine, cake. I really love a good cake. And I really love wine, cocktails, all those three things together.
Yeah.
That makes me happy. I'm also very positive, which is why my breast cancer story is not one that I usually talk about as a negative. It's a positive. I experienced a lot in life. It taught me a lot about myself. And pulling back a little bit, entrepreneurship is something that I love because I love people and I love meeting people and helping people. And this enabled me to go out and meet the masses and see how I can help them. My breast cancer story brought me to a point where I can also use that to meet people and help people. So back in 2019, when I was diagnosed, it was one of those, okay, what am I going to learn about myself and how is this going to impact all the people around me? And the day of my diagnosis, I had a whole European trip planned. Wow. So I took my diagnosis in stride. The first thing I said to the surgeon, as he said, well, we're going to have to do surgery. Literally, my first words were, do I get new boobs? I mean, really, when else can you ask that question?
Good point. I'm not sure when else you can ask that question. Yeah.
My husband looked over at me stunned, like, "Are you kidding?" And the surgeon and I were just like chuckling at each other. I'm like, "Hey, fair question. Yes, no?" He said no. I mean, that's how I approached everything. How is this going to work for me? How am I going to make this the best experience I possibly can? It will help with my healing journey. And it also just helps me, period. Because I want to take myself out of it and look at the entire scenario instead of sitting there and being down on myself. Now, everyone's experience is different, but this is how I approach all things in my life.
Right. And that comes through loud and clear in your book, by the way. Your entrepreneur story, we want to hear a little bit more about that and the work that you do. And I think, right, the advocacy that you have taken on in the context of your journey. So your book, which I just mentioned, Tomorrow's Another Day, you're facing cancer. I mean, your journey started prior to the pandemic, but your journey continued throughout the pandemic. So what made you decide to tell your story and write this book?
You know, I really started thinking about how I was going to tell the story late on in my treatment. I initially started journaling because as I was getting ready to start chemo, I had to take one of those chemo information sessions. And the one line that stuck out to me was chemo fog, and you're probably going to have a lot of memory loss. And I remember saying to myself, oh crap, my memory's already really bad. How is this going to work out? So I did what I typically wouldn't do. I was never someone who grew up journaling or anything like that. Not my thing. But I started doing it because I wanted to remember everything. So while I was going through treatment and while I just kept writing everything down, I said, this would be really important to share with other people. It would really, especially when I saw how my family, how the communication was going in terms of, when my family here in Canada, I was talking to my family in Jamaica, it's like no one wanted to say cancer. Everyone was just saying, oh, she's sick. I'm like, no, 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 no. I know we have certain stigmas in the Black community. We need to really speak clearly about all the things that we are going through because we can help other people. And that's when I decided that I had to put this down on paper and publish something that can help people who looked like me because we need to have more conversation around cancer treatment, even for people who are the caregivers of those going through cancer. You don't know what to expect. My family had no clue. As far as my mother was concerned, the only words she knew was chemo and radiation. She knew nothing else. So this entire process I went through taught her a lot about how cancer treatment really is. So I had to put it out there. I felt like I had no choice because it wasn't about me in that moment. It was about how I can help my community.
Yeah, so important. I think as well, not just the cancer treatment, but the cancer-induced menopause, right? That's a big piece. And as a Black woman who has experienced cancer-induced menopause and is still experiencing the effects of that, what insights can you share about the unique challenges Black women face during this transition, which for some of us like you, it's not a transition, it's an overnight bam.
Look, before I even go into answering the main question, the overnight component, I mean, I had no idea what to expect.
Right.
I remember having my monthly oncology visits, and one month I was fine. And the next month, I literally went in, and my poor oncologist, I held on to a tire in front of my belly, and I said, what is this? I don't
Yeah.
understand. What's going on here? And he's like, oh, yeah, that's what happens. I'm like, but no one gave me the 411, sir.
Heads
I
up
don't know
might
what
have been
to do.
nice. Yeah. Wow.
So it was eye opening, but these are the frank conversations we need to have. And I mean, in my case, I would like to say that my oncologist was as open as he knew how to be or as he could be, but in the Black community, I mean, there are many things. There's cultural stigma around menopause. There's cultural stigma about a lot of things, and it's often seen as a taboo topic. And there's just really no conversation or support. So the more we talk about it, the more we can help everyone navigate all of the physical and emotional challenges. Because still, if I go around and hold my belly, a lot of my friends are like, "What are you doing? Don't do that." I'm like, "No, no, no." But this is real. This is
Uh-huh.
real, right? And we also, even while going through cancer, just the intersection of cancer and menopause is not something that, again, I heard a lot about. And even at the menopause show, I would have loved a lot more topics on that because that was what I personally was there for. And then there's representation and research. I do know that there seems to be a lot of the hospitals are starting to push forward to try to do research, but I would love to see representation in the Black community. There needs to be some specific research done because we are usually the ones left behind, right?
Yep.
I know that I think is it Mount Sinai that started one so far? I know Trillium is probably looking at starting one. And we need to have a little bit more community type events surrounding menopause. No, it's not just for people who are 40 and above. Because if I'm in school learning about puberty, why can't I learn about menopause?
Absolutely. And if I'm not mistaken, some of the very little research that does exist in the context of Black women experiencing perimenopausal symptoms, etc., often their symptoms are more severe. Often they last longer.
Hmm.
They're a lot more likely to not say anything,
Yeah.
right? And that's part of that other aspect of community is we need to help everybody understand that we need their voices, right? Because that's how we're going to affect change. We need to speak up and say, hey, this, I'm suffering and this is not okay and I need help.
Yeah, yeah. And I think part of it also belongs to us in the Black community in terms of not feeling like we have to be that strong Black woman. I'm tired. I am not strong. I only have to be because I feel like I have no option,
Right.
but I'm not. So we need to really start crying for help because we need the help and we need the information.
Well said. You mentioned suddenly developing a tire around your midsection within a month. Are there other symptoms that no one told you about that were just crazy?
I felt like my vagina was being ripped out. I mean,
Uh-huh. Please tell us more.
it's like I really thought something serious was wrong with me. I didn't know
Well,
this was a
well,
side
something
effect.
serious was wrong with you. Just
Yes. I
yes.
was like, what is going on? Why do I feel like from front to back, it's like no feeling I've ever had in my life? Why didn't anyone warn me about this? I feel like, you know, ladies, even if you don't want to say it out loud and you're not as bold as I am, can we have like a code or something?
No. Dwayne, we're going to take it back. We're all going to learn to proudly say vulva and vagina and learn what the vulva is, what the vagina is, and understand it's not supposed to hurt, burn, leak urine, right? All of these things that we all just
Yeah.
seem to put up with.
Like, no one, they go, oh, we should probably discuss sexual health. What sex? What? What?
Right. Yeah.
There's no way. I'm like at a loss for words because it is really something that shocked me. I'm like, how did no one tell me this? And, like I was told about the sweats and
Yeah.
hair thinning, which I was like, oh my gosh.
Mouth sores.
Yes.
I remember reading in your book you describing how crazy that was, right? But your vulva is also skin and what, like, yeah,
If this was a man problem, this part would definitely have already been solved.
yeah, no kidding. So have you been provided with solutions, with options? Where does that stand?
Well, there were things that I was told to try, like, it gets kind of messy. So I had to try capsules. that I had to insert in my vagina. It's like coconut oil based. That just gets messy.
Okay.
Then I had to try a topical solution. I won't say the brand.
Okay.
And then there was another one that I actually found at the menopause show, and that's the one I've been using.
Oh,
And
do tell.
that's been okay so far. You can get it at Hudson's Bay. You should
Okay.
probably, I think you know which one I'm talking about. They're
Okay.
all over there.
Okay.
But right now, that's all I have. But I do have a list of questions for my next oncology visit because I do not plan on living another year like this. I do not. It's not fun at all.
Yeah. And it's, you know, obviously very important to save your life. But where is the quality of life discussion and consideration? And sex is a big part of our quality of life, right? And I almost, I can feel something in my body when I say that because for the longest time, I didn't think we were allowed to say that or we were
Yeah.
supposed to say that. But our pleasure is important, it's an integral part of who we are. And never mind the fact that the pain, the burning, all of those things can drive you to distraction. I've had a very limited, small experience with having just excruciating burning pain in my vulva, and I couldn't really do anything else. It's all that it was all consuming. And how are you supposed to navigate life, let alone experience pleasure, when you're driven to distraction?
It's true. I mean, I also think going through the entire cancer process, I feel this could have been some added information provided. I mean, I had two oncologists. So in my first oncologist, in his defense, I do remember I came to him with something and I'm like, it's okay, but I'm alive because I'm not one who likes to complain. And I felt like I was complaining. And he's like, first of all,
Yeah.
this is the room you complain in. So I need you to come in here with all your
Excellent.
complaints. So I
Excellent.
started
Good.
having a log on my phone and I would come into my complaints.
Right.
And then I remember at the end of the first one, I was like, I'm alive. And he looked at me and his words were, that is the bare minimum. We can do better. So I appreciated that.
Well, that's refreshing to hear. That's amazing. Yes, I'm sure you did. The stuff that just is unspoken and not shared really is unbelievable, right? And thank you for being on our podcast and for sharing, because there are so many other women out there who are struggling silently, are too afraid to ask, are being strong, are not wanting to make their oncologist or their doctor or whomever uncomfortable. And we need to understand that, yeah, it's okay to do that, right? Doesn't mean we have to be rude or disrespectful. I think we seem to think it's either that or be quiet. There's a lot in between, and we need to learn how to navigate that. And the only way that's going to happen is if we talk about it openly. So thank you.
Yeah, well, I have to thank you as well for having this platform and providing a space. Like part of the delivering and the amplification of messages like these to the Black community is having a space in order to say what needs to be said. And this is the perfect platform. So I thank you for that.
Oh, hey, our pleasure, right? It's been incredibly rewarding. We get to meet fantastic people like yourself, and the feedback we get is thank you. I had no idea. I thought I was going crazy. I didn't realize. I didn't know, and that's why we're doing this, because as you know a little bit about us, we really struggled, and don't know what we would have done without each other. And we recognize not everybody has in each other to talk about, right? And your experience in particular, right? It's sometimes hard enough to find a friend who is also struggling with perimenopausal symptoms, for example, but someone who's actually been through or going through what you did from a breast cancer perspective, right? It's rough. It's rough. And remind me now, you had a lumpectomy, you had radiation and chemo, the full cocktail, so to speak, not to
Oh,
be,
cocktail.
flippant about it, but I feel like, yeah, you are funny and optimistic. Your book blew me away. How positive! I just want to circle back to you talked about getting your diagnosis on the day of a vacation to you were heading to Europe, and you were heading there with your mother, and you opted not to tell her until after the vacation. And I am in awe of your ability to be in the moment and to enjoy and to focus on your loves, right? Cake, food, it sounds like is a pretty big thing on your list as well. Into experience. And that so comes through in your book. And it's beautiful. I think part of it is your personality, but how did you do that?
You know what? I am really good at compartmentalizing. And it can be a blessing or a curse, but this was a big deal for my mother. She really, like, as long as I can remember, she's always wanted to go to England. And, my husband and I were like, let's plan a trip. And, like, she has to come. And I I like to say I'm the apple of her eye. I'm the oldest. My sisters can say whatever they want. I'm the oldest. So I'm the favorite.
And they're not here.
And they
So,
will listen
yes,
to this
absolutely.
and know. So, it's one of those things where growing up, she has been through a lot with me with illnesses because I was very asthmatic as a child. And she would have to be all over me. Like if I laughed, I would have an asthma attack. That's how severe it
Oh, my
was. So
goodness.
I spent a lot of time in the hospital, a lot.
Okay.
So I don't want to give her bad news because I know it would gut her. And I just wanted her to enjoy this trip. So I vowed my husband to secrecy, and one of my sisters knew, and only because she's a nurse and she, was helping me advocate, like having lists of questions that I should ask and video chatting when I'm in appointments, things like that. So those two people were sworn to secrecy, and the cat almost came out of the bag when she saw the tape over where they had to do the biopsy, and I was like, oh, I just cut myself shaving or something like that. I don't know.
On your boob.
Yeah, I had to come up with something real quick on my feet. And, I just wanted her to enjoy it. I mean, I have to say, when we came back, she was already, like, as soon as we landed, all our phones were going off, and we were already getting some not so great news about my uncle in Jamaica. And I just had to pile on the same news because I literally had 3 days before surgery. So it's like, had a good trip? Well, here's what's happening.
Wow.
And I think she forgot the entire trip. But in my eyes, she got to experience it.
Amazing. You said earlier, I'm not strong, but I have to be strong. I get that, but I would say you are strong. And you also are an entrepreneur, and you founded Canadian Small Business Women in 2013. Maybe we can talk first a little bit about that platform, why you started it. And then the second part, how did you manage all of that while going through this cancer journey?
Well, the first part, why did I start it? So I went to school at the University of Windsor. Go Lancers. And I had a really good first job and I loved it. My background is in chemistry and I love working in a lab. Love lab work. The company I worked for, they went bankrupt.
Okay.
And I had a summer where I had no work and no school. Probably for the first time that I could remember because I was that child who my parents sent me to summer school, whether I needed to go or not. I mean,
Right.
I've been to library summer schools.
Hardcore. That's hardcore.
I finished all of my requirements for high school in my junior year because I went to summer school.
Uh-huh.
So I was like, I have a summer. What am I going to do? And I was bored after 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to start a business. And then I couldn't find any information on how to do it. I kept just being bounced from here, there, everywhere. And I'm like, I've been in Canada for a little while now. How is it that I can't find this information? And what about immigrants who are coming and want to start a business? If I can't find it and I'm somewhat entrenched in the Canadian culture, how is it that they're finding it? And I literally just started teaching myself how to start a business, and I started a blog, and I started doing networking events, and it just snowballed into Canadian Small Business Women because I wanted to initially help people who look like me, because a lot of the immigration or immigrant type events were job fairs.
Right.
They were not trying to cater to immigrants who wanted to be entrepreneurs. So it went from that to now us, hosting these large scale events and having all these consulting sessions. And yeah, we do quite a bit, and I'm very proud of the work that we've been doing over the past 12 years. Yeah. I know there was a second part to the question.
How do you do it? How do you And before, sorry, I got sidetracked. You not only had the lumpectomy, the radiation chemo, you also had your ovaries removed, correct?
Yeah.
There's a little more context for our listeners. How did you do this? How do you continue to do this?
Well, I should probably start by admitting another thing. Like, I do have a full time job. Like, I manage a lab. So,
Oh yeah, right. I completely blocked that out because I'm like, there's no way.
I don't know. I'm an overachiever, but I'm incredibly organized. And I do set boundaries, and I know when to say no to things that I know will overwhelm me.
Okay.
I will ask myself the question, why do I want to say yes to this? And if I can't come up with some valid answers, I do not say yes. But I try to incorporate things when I can. So, the business and the book does go hand in hand because I do get to impact the people in my network by continuously talking about my experience, right? And the same kind of goes for things with my 9 to 5. I do have open conversations with my colleagues because my colleagues might be going through something or their family members might be going through something, and they will come and ask me because they know that I will be open. So I try to share my story wherever I can and use all of my experiences in every realm of my life.
It sounds like everything you do undertake has a lens of service and community to it. There's research that shows that actually is very energizing. I guess that explains it. It's still very, very, very impressive. You blow us away.
Oh, thank you. I mean, for everyone too, I've been volunteering since I was a child, right? I've been doing my service. Volunteerism makes the world go round, everyone. And I've been really a part of many community organizations for as long as I can remember. So everything I do, yes, I want to see how I can help because you ask yourself, I don't know if other people do this, but I ask myself this question often. What is my purpose? Why am I here? Especially when you've been through things. It's like, why was I able to go through this? There has to be a reason. What am I supposed to do with this? And for me, also because I'm a little chatterbox, my reason is to talk about it all the time so everyone can know.
Yeah, yeah, amazing. You talked about boundaries. You talked about I'm not really strong, but I have to be strong. You clearly persevere, put one foot in front of the other. Do you ever take time to just fall apart?
Um, yes and no. So it depends on what falling apart looks like to you. But for me, like,
Okay.
I don't stay angry long and I don't stay hurt long. It's something I feel it just doesn't serve me well. I will take the time to recognize how I'm feeling. I mean, I do have a feeling wheel posted in my office. How am I feeling today?
I love that.
Great thing for my therapist.
We're kind of laughing, but it's so important because a lot of us don't actually understand when we're hit with a wave of emotion what is actually going on.
Exactly. And it helps me to recognize what I'm going through. It helps me to accept it. And if I need 10 minutes, I'll take the 10 minutes. If I need to scream for 10 minutes, I will scream for 10 minutes. I mean, I famously am the person at work who, when it's summer, I will just be standing in the parking lot in the sun because I'm like, I need a moment, and my moment is going to be outside in the sun. I did say sun is one of the things I love, right?
You did. You did. Sometimes with a
Um,
cocktail in the parking lot in the sun. I
no
don't know.
cocktails at work. So I would go and I will stand in the sun, and it makes me feel good. And then when I feel like I'm back to normal, I go inside. But I also have another rule. Once I say I'm over it, I'm over it. I cannot let it fester because that is just taking up energy that I don't want it to take up. I would like to move on and be happy. So I take the time that I need. I will do whatever I need to do in order to, you know, handle my feelings, and then I move on.
So smart. So, for listeners out there who are feeling overwhelmed, perhaps by similar circumstances, struggling, don't feel heard, overwhelmed by work, overwhelmed by perhaps a cancer diagnosis, what advice would you give them?
It's really tough because everyone takes things so differently. And I was speaking to someone yesterday whose very close friend was going through cancer, is going through cancer, and it's stage 4. And this friend is still in a rut and will not accept where she is and enjoy the rest of the life that she has. And sometimes I think we're so focused on the woe it's me or the why me, as opposed to trying to think of how can I make the most of the moment that I'm in. And it's not often that I compare myself to others, but in cases when I'm going through something, I'm often thinking about others who have it worse than I do. And I think, I should be appreciative of this moment. Yesterday, driving home, yes, I remote started my car. I sat in my car with the nice heated seats. And as I was driving home the entire time, all I kept thinking to myself is, I hope anyone who does not have a place to stay is not sleeping on the street today. That's all I kept thinking. Because being cold to me is punishment. I feel like it's the worst thing ever that anyone can do to me. So that's, like, because I'm appreciating where I am and I'm thinking about the other people who don't have what I have. So sometimes it's that kind of perspective that can help anyone that's going through whatever it is you're going through really appreciate where you are. If you are able to have access to health care, appreciate that. Think of other countries in the world and how that would go down. If you have access to a friend or family member or anyone who can support you, be thankful for that. So just think about all the things that you can be thankful for in that moment and focus on that instead of the negative, because having all those positive thoughts, they go a long way, especially in recovery.
Yeah. Well, and you're a shining example of that. You face some significant challenges, which you've navigated beautifully. Based on that experience, what changes would you like to see in how the healthcare system, our healthcare system, I guess any healthcare system really supports women, particularly women of color, whether it's cancer, menopause, both? What do you think needs to change? What would you like to see change?
I mean, there are a number of things. I mean, first things first is representation. I know how I feel when I walk into a hospital and see someone who looks like me, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I want to feel at home,
Yeah.
right? And that helps me feel at home. There's also the language that's used when you're going through situations like these. Like, I don't want to come out of surgery and have someone go, "Oh, it's not like you went through major surgeries. Oh, you're doing well. It's like you didn't even have surgery." No, no, no. I did, and I would like you to treat me as such, right? Like the language, just having some culturally competent care. So making sure that the healthcare providers, they understand cultural nuances and biases and just the unique needs that we have as women of color. And definitely some more access to mental health support.
Ah.
That was one of the biggest pieces of advice I received from my oncologist, because when I would go in there with my list, he's like, you need a therapist. You need to get one now, because you're not like pandemic, cancer, like all these things compounded. You need to speak to someone. So, having that kind of conversation, I was very happy he said what he said, and he was very firm about it, and I was very appreciative. But having more access to that would really help. And also, we talked about this before, but inclusive research. We need to be a part of the research. We need to be a part of all the conversations. We need to have ways to feel empowered to speak up. So if we are part of the conversation, we will speak up. I think there also needs to be some more support for caregivers.
Tell me about that.
The role of the family, my family did a lot for me. And there are some, I can say thank you, Trillium. There are some caregiver classes and information sessions that are offered, but more of that needs to be out there. At least more accessible information for caregivers needs to be out there, because in certain cultures, like the family is really what's important. Like, was I having a stranger come into my house? No, my family was coming into my house. My sister's a nurse. I needed to have monthly injections. My sister was doing that. I wasn't necessarily going to a Lynn unless I had to, right? So we need to think about how we can empower caregivers to do what needs to be done.
Yeah, I think that's something that is very much taken for granted until you're in it, right? Either as the patient or as a caregiver,
Yeah.
and it can be incredibly overwhelming, right? Particularly if you don't have someone in the family who is a nurse or has, you know, those skill sets.
Yeah. And then even, I mean, patient advocacy too, because a lot of times we are afraid to ask for the things that we need. And if we ask, it's still as if you're begging for what you're supposed to be able to get, and don't feel like you are above it. I will beg if I need to. Because if it's something that's important to you, you will find a way to make it happen, but not everyone's as vocal as me, right? So I we need to really empower people to ask for what they need. Like how my oncologist said, this is the space that you come and complain in. This is it. So I felt empowered to complain.
Right. And I think too, we need to ask because we often make the assumption that the oncologist, the doctor, the OBGYN, they're going to tell us everything we need to know. Yet no one thought to mention that you will very likely feel like your vagina is being ripped out of your body, right? So you've got to say, hey, I've got a problem. My vulva's on fire. I need help putting this fire out, or, right, I'm going to lose my mind.
Yeah, problem solved.
Problem solved.
Where's our Nobel Prize?
Dwania, what's the one thing you want every woman to know about perimenopause?
We need to accept that it's a natural part of life, but it doesn't mean that it has to be as terrifying as I might have made it sound. Your vagina might not be ripped out all the time. That is if you have the right support. So you need to find the support, you need to get the knowledge, and you need to navigate it with confidence, because we need answers. Historically, it's not going to change. We always have to fight for what we want. So let's fight together. It's the collective war on menopause.
Yeah.
And, talk to each other, please. And teach your kids if you have children. Because if it's not being taught in school, I mean, in the same breath that you would probably teach your kids about safe sex, teach your kids about what we are going through as women. Mic drop.
Boom. Awesome. Thank you, Dwania. It's always a delight to speak with you. And let's, as I said earlier, do it again when we can have Michelle back. Maybe you could come on and coach Michelle and I about boundaries and positive thinking and compartmentalizing in a positive way. I think, yeah, like I'm all over that.
It's a date, sunshine, wine, and cake involved, right?
Perfect.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. This was really a fun conversation. Even though it's not a fun topic, the conversation is fun. So I really appreciate it and I really hope that everyone listening, please, as you're listening to this, jot down questions that you know that you need to go and ask your friends the next time you have a little girls gathering. Talk about it because you'd be surprised what's going on with your friends in the room.
Thanks so much for listening to the show. If you like what you hear, please take a moment to rate and subscribe to our podcast. When you do this, it helps to raise our podcast profile so more women can find us and get a little better understanding of what to expect in perimenopause.
We also read all the reviews, the good, the bad, and the ugly, to help us continuously improve our show. We would love to hear from you. You can connect with us through the podcast, on social media, or through our website. Our information, as well as links and details from our conversation today, can be found in the show notes. This podcast is for general information only. It's designed to educate, inspire, and support you on your personal journey through perimenopause. The information and opinions on this podcast are not intended to be a substitution for primary care, diagnosis, or treatment. The information on this podcast does not replace professional healthcare advice. The use of the information discussed is at the sole discretion of the listener. If you are suffering from symptoms or have questions, please consult a qualified healthcare practitioner.